Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming, and something of an impromptu video. I've got a whole bunch of videos recorded, but I wanted to record something special. This one is tied into one of the requests I've had. You see, one of the backers of the World Below on backer kits, and I'm going to mention this on various videos, backed at the hard copy version, sent me proof of their purchase and requested a video as thanks, because that's what I offered. I said, if you back for a hard copy of the World Below, I'll create a video of your choosing. And what they wanted to know was, they wanted a video explaining how to run games of They Came From. Specifically, they said They Came From Beyond the Grave. They said they just can't wrap their head around how to run it. Now, I was going to make a separate video about that, but I realised it actually ties into a nice subject that is topical right now. And that subject is, there's a GM's Day sale going on right now on DriveThruRPG.com. That is as of time of recording and as of time of upload. It should be running, I think, until about the 4th of March, I want to say. So it's a very limited window. But the reason I wanted to mention it in this video is because I think all of the They Came From products, bar maybe one Tasty Bit product, a very thin product that we released last month, I want to say, or the month before, in January, are currently on 40% off. Now, it isn't just They Came From products, though I will obviously put a whole bunch of images up here to show you some of the books with money off. I think pretty much the entire Onyx Path catalogue has got 40% off the purchase price right now, which is stunning, because if you have, let's say you've got £20 right now, you've got £20 to spend. Imagine being in that position, 20 whole pounds in your fingertips. What are you going to do with that money? Well, what you could do with it right now, with this money off, you could buy yourself a copy of They Came From Beyond the Grave, you could buy yourself a copy of, Tales of Depravity, you could buy yourself a copy of Monsters from the Crypt, and I still think you'd have some change left over to buy something else. You could use this money towards purchasing Mage the Ascension 20th Anniversary Edition. You could buy Exalted Essence. You could buy Once and Future for Scion. There's a whole bunch of other books, and I, as I say, will have various illustrations, front covers, and the like popping up around me. And I want to draw special attention to They Came From because it's a game that I have done very well by and has done very well by me. Most of you are going to be aware at this point that I came up with the idea for They Came From. I conceptualized it, if you like. I developed Beneath the Sea, They Came From Beyond the Grave, They Came From Classified, They Came From Camp Murder Lake. I co-developed They Came From the Cyclops' Cave with Michele Marsala. Since then, we have also got They Came From the RPG Anthology coming out. There's a whole lot of They Came From, and I think it must be one of the most well-supported lines for Onyx Path. And part of the reason for that is I find it very easy to come up with content for They Came From. It is amazing to have come up with a game and to see it in print. And hell, I mean, you might be able to see it behind me if the green light that I, for some reason, chose for this video isn't too dim. But in answer to the question, and the reason I say this ties in isn't just because They Came From is on sale, it's because it's GM's Day. And why GM's Day is important in this context? Well, the question was, how do I run They Came From? And I could give the very flippant answer of, I think They Came From is the easiest game in the world to run. But, of course I think that. I came up with it, and so I instinctively know how to run it. But you have to also factor in that not everyone is familiar with running games with satirical or parody, comedy elements. Not everyone is familiar with how to run games that are based pretty explicitly on movies, TV shows, and so on. A lot of the time it's generally role-playing games go for a theme rather than a specific subject matter. So you'll have fantasy, a genre, for instance, or you'll have horror, or personal horror, or gothic horror, or we could go down the list. Sci-fi, noir, investigative, and so on. They Came From is a little more focused than that, I guess, although you can very much change the dial on how serious and how comedic you want it to be. And this is something I like to emphasize to people. They came from, I think, a lot of people look at it and they say, oh, my group don't play comedy games. Well, the game, as written, while it has humorous elements, is a game that the system completely supports being played seriously. And you don't have to change the monsters, you don't have to change the archetypes you're playing, you don't have to change the system at all to make it a horrific game. To the point that I think the very first actual play I recorded with Red Moon role-playing for They Came From Beneath the Sea is done completely seriously. It's a Lovecraftian Beneath the Sea game. And this takes me round to the question again, and its answer. How do I run They Came From Beneath the Sea? Or how do I recommend running They Came From Beyond the Grave? Step one is find a horror movie you like. And in particular, find a horror movie that you don't think is very well acclaimed. Now, this isn't supposed to be a pissing contest of Rotten Tomatoes scores and IMDb scores. This is let's say you're a fan of 80s horror or 70s horror. You like your niche giallo movies, your Hammer horrors, your Roger Cormans, and so on. You pick a movie that appeals to you, something you find fun, and maybe you find amusing as well. It is possible to appreciate a movie that you think is good on a humorous level as well as a horrific level. For example, I love George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. It probably still ranks as my favourite horror movie, but there are elements of humour and farce in it. And so you find your movie, and from that movie, you break it down into scenes, just like the director would have, or the writer would have. And once you've broken it down into scenes, well, wouldn't you know, you have a one-shot arc, or maybe a couple of game sessions arc worth of plot. Now, you're going to change a bit to and from this plot so it doesn't feel explicitly like this movie. Maybe your zombies, instead of being slow-moving, are fast-moving. Maybe they're now rage-infected. Maybe they're the zombies from Left 4 Dead, and so you have a variety. You've got your boomers and your witches and so on, if we're going for the Dawn of the Dead variety. And your player characters, well, they don't have to be our two SWAT team members, helicopter pilot and news journalist. They can instead be an actor. They can be, a biker. That we could also have a scientist. And we could have a homemaker who just got stuck in the wrong shopping mall. And instead of setting it in a shopping mall now, well, I think the shopping mall is still a pretty good setting for a zombie game as well as a zombie movie, but let's set it somewhere slightly different. Maybe let's set it in an amusement park. Or let's set it in, what's another complex? A big American high school. Because a lot of those American high schools and Canadian high schools, they tend to be sprawling complexes. Speaking of complexes, it could be in a government complex, but that does tend to make weapons a little easy to access. And so you can still use your origin material to influence the game you're preparing. Now, when it comes to actually running the game, the question of how serious do you make it, how funny do you make it, it's easy enough to determine because you check with your players. What kind of tone are the players looking for? Do you want this to be jokes all the time? Do you want it to be horrific with a lot of dry humour? Do you want there to be puns? Do you want it to be exclusive to the quips, to really make the quips in your games stand out? Because quips are a mechanic in the They Came From games. You ask the players, what kind of tone are they going for? How serious do they want the game to be? And you may have your preferences as well, and you should voice them to the players too. And once the game begins, well, this is where I provide a certain amount of universal advice. Advice I would provide no matter what game you are running. And that advice is, you let the players dictate the pace, the tone, and what happens next. Yes, you should have ideas. Yes, you should have certain NPCs or supporting characters in mind. And in fact, when I write games to run now, I tend to just write a list of character names because my games are very character focused. I don't really write set pieces or anything like that. I write the characters you will encounter and their motivations. Who is this person? What do they want? Sometimes it'll be they want to get into, and it'll be a place, and then I might write the place and what's special about it, that kind of thing. And when you start putting that kind of information together, you start building the skeleton of your game. Because now you know where your character's going to start. Maybe they're starting at the doors to the high school as zombies are getting closer and closer towards them. So the first challenge they've got is to get in through the locked doors. Maybe someone's chained them shut. So in order to get in access to this place, they've actually got to break a window, make the place more vulnerable than it is already. Then they've got to board that window up again. So now they're inside. Maybe there's a survivor already in there. Or maybe they've got to check and clear the place a bit first, like Dawn of the Dead. And after they've cleared through a few of the undead, they find some survivors. Now remember, if this is They Came From, you want the game to have elements of humour, generally. Not always, but generally. So maybe there should be something slightly awkward about some of the people you find. Maybe there should be something uncomfortable. Maybe they will be characters you'll be quite happy to throw to the zombies to act as distractions. Maybe they're characters that your characters would have loved to have left outside, that kind of thing. And once they've reinforced the high school, turned it into a fortress, well, after that, where does the challenge come in? Now it's the interaction with the player characters, maybe, well, the non-player characters, I should say. Now it is things like, well, finding a way out of your fortress, finding a way to sustain yourself, for instance. How are you going to get to and from with food? Because this is the old problem with zombies. Once you've seen a few, that tends to cut it a bit short. Obviously, a good measure in any horror game, any zombie game, is to have someone secretly infected, but that's to be expected. So I would turn that on its head, whether we're playing They Came From, or, well, The Thing, or anything else. The suspicion that someone is infected, but you can't find evidence, and so create a certain amount of paranoia. But again, you can be a bit satirical, you can be a bit parodic, you can make the obvious person not infected. And so everyone is pillorying this individual, and it turns out that they're actually clean. And then the most helpful person, of course, turns out to be the horrible infected individual. But again, sometimes farce, sometimes comedy works best when the obvious is there right in front of you. You can really draw attention to it, and you can really lambast that individual. So maybe the church mother who is in the school and saying, "Oh, I surely wouldn't let any harm come to the flock in this school," and then she starts praying for you and castigating you for not being Christian enough and generally being unpleasant. Well, of course, she's the person who's infected, and you'll take great joy in showing everyone else. Now, there's lots of ways you can do it, of course, but I always advise when people run They Came From, the first time, keep it simple. Keep it simple. It's a D10 dice pool system. 8s and above are successes, or hits, for Storypath Ultra. Remember that. 8s and above are your hits. Quips will add dice to your pool. Cinematics you purchase with your rewrites, and cinematics can change the fabric of the game. They can add rooms, they can throw in stuntmen, they can insert deleted scenes or cut through missing reels, that kind of thing. You can kill extras. You're about to die, so an extra is suddenly pulled into shot and the zombie's mouth. Now, that is all I tend to use when I'm running a very simple They Came From game. Dice pool, quips, cinematics, boom, you're done. Anything else, that's a slightly more advanced level of play. Then you'll start using your trademarks. Then you will start using your enhancements and complications. An even more advanced level of play is when you use your stunts, or tricks as they're known in Storypath Ultra, where your additional hits can be used to purchase tricks like grappling, falling prone, critical hits, and so forth. Now, if you're very confident with the system, you can do that early on. But if you're not, great. There's a tiered way of playing They Came From. And that's what I recommend to you, person who bought The World Below in hard copy. Well, if you pick up any of the They Came From products on DriveThruRPG while the GM's Day sale is on, 40% off of all so many things. Well, just keep it simple. Use the simplest of the rules, and then when you're a little more comfortable with it, advance it. I don't deny that the story path system, if you look at it in its totality, like any system can feel overwhelming. Pretty much any system, from D&D to Vampire, well, so D20, Storyteller, Story Path. If you look at it in its totality, you think, how am I supposed to keep all of this in my head? Simple. You're not going to use it all at once. And so in the end, all it comes down to is what story do you want to tell? What characters do you want your players to interact with? What challenges do you want to put in their path? What challenges should they overcome? Which challenges should they fail? And when they want their character to do something heroic, you let them do something heroic. And when their characters do something utterly stupid and they have no rewrites left to correct their action, you let them fail, because failure earns rewrites in the game. Remember, it's an interesting story if they fail in order to succeed. That is how many a movie story is told, and that's what They Came From is playing with. So anyway, I've said my piece. Please do check out the GM's Day sale. I'll post a few links in the video description below. And in the meantime, get playing They Came From. And if you've ran it, if you've played it, please let me know in the comments below. And if you've not checked it out yet, 40% off all these products. Take advantage of the sale and let me know below which ones you buy. Thank you very much for watching.